Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. More than 120 world leaders gathered in Glasgow, Scotland, Monday for the opening of a crucial United Nations climate summit whose outcome could determine the future habitability of the planet. The COP26 Climate Change Conference, as it's officially called, opened with this dire warning from UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres.
Enough of brutalizing biodiversity. Enough of killing ourselves with carbon. Enough of treating nature like a toilet. Enough of burning and drilling and mining our way deeper. We are digging our own graves.
As COP26 got underway, leaders from over 100 countries pledged to end and reverse deforestation by 2030. India also unveiled its plan to reduce carbon emissions to net zero, but only by 2070. And the United States is announcing a new plan today to reduce methane emissions. Speaking to the assembled leaders, President Joe Biden apologized for former President Trump's decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Accord. Biden said the U.S. and other nations who've contributed the most to the climate crisis have overwhelming obligations to help poorer countries contend with the climate emergency. Biden's comments came just days after he called on OPEC to increase oil production to lower fuel costs. Thousands of protesters have assembled outside the climate summit, demanding meaningful action to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. This is 19-year-old Mexican climate activist Maria Reyes.
My message for global world leaders is that they cannot have a climate negotiation without the people most impacted by the climate crisis present. If we allow them to do that, COP26 is going to be a rich people's conversation, and rich people are not most affected by the climate crisis. We are.
After headlines, we'll go to the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow for the latest. President Biden's domestic agenda was dealt a serious blow Monday when conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin refused to commit to supporting the pared-down Build Back Better Act, the 10-year, $1.75 trillion program to mitigate the climate crisis while expanding social programs. Among other things, the bill would expand clean energy programs, provide universal preschool to 3- and 4-year-olds, and expand Medicaid and Medicare. Manchin's opposition has idled a $1 trillion infrastructure bill passed by the Senate in August, with progressives refusing to approve the bill until they have assurances senators will pass the larger climate and spending package. On Monday, Senator Manchin said he needed more time to weigh the Build Back Better Act's impact on the national debt and the U.S. economy, even as he urged House Democrats to immediately vote on the infrastructure bill.
For the sake of the country, I urge the House to vote and pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Holding this bill hostage is not going to work in getting my support for the reconciliation bill.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments Monday on whether to uphold Texas's ban on abortions after 6 weeks before most people know they're pregnant. The law, known as SB 8, also allows private citizens anywhere in the United States to sue healthcare workers and others for facilitating an abortion in Texas. It's the most serious challenge yet to the landmark 1973 Supreme Court ruling Roe v. Wade, which guaranteed the right to an abortion. The court's 3 liberal justices asked if allowing the Texas law to stand would invite other state legislatures to pass laws invalidating other constitutional rights. This is Justice Elena Kagan.
We would live in a very different world from the world we live in today. Essentially, we would be inviting states, all 50 of them, with respect to their unpreferred constitutional rights, to try to nullify the law that this court has laid down as to the content of those rights.
We'll get the latest on the Supreme Court and Texas's abortion ban later in the broadcast. Today is Election Day in the United States. In Virginia, a record number of registered voters cast early ballots ahead of today's highly watched governor's race between Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin, a former CEO of the private equity firm that's backed by former President Donald Trump. Terry McAuliffe is close to Bill and Hillary Clinton, is one of the Democratic Party's most prolific fundraisers. He previously served one term as Virginia's governor, was chair of the Democratic National Committee from 2001 to 2005. Advisors to the Centers for Disease Control meet today to discuss the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine for children as young as 5. The FDA's already approved shots for 5 to 11-year-olds, saying the benefits of vaccinations far outweigh the risks to kids. The Biden administration says millions of pediatric vaccine doses have already begun shipping around the country and that inoculations could begin later this week, once CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky gives the final green light. New York City has placed about 9,000 municipal workers who defied a vaccine mandate on unpaid leave. Mayor Bill de Blasio says 91% of New York employees got at least one shot ahead of Monday's deadline. In Illinois, a Cook County judge has blocked the city of Chicago's mandate that for police officers to get vaccinated against COVID-19 by December 31st, saying the issue should be settled in arbitration. Some 1,700 Chicago police officers report they're not vaccinated, and a further 3,000 have refused to report their vaccination status to Chicago. The UN Security Council's extended the UN peacekeeping mission in Moroccan-occupied Western Sahara for another year. The resolution, approved Friday, calls for a resumption of UN-brokered talks between Morocco, which has occupied the Northwest African territory since 1975, and the Polisario Front, the Sahrawi liberation movement seeking independence. Morocco's invasion set off decades of torture, disappearances, killings, and repression against pro-independence Sahrawis living in the occupied Western Sahara. Last November, Morocco violated a 29-year ceasefire with the Polisario Front, and war returned to the territory for the first time since 1991. To see our documentary 4 Days in Western Sahara, Africa's Last Colony, go to democracynow.org. In Burma, local media is reporting military forces shelled a restive town in northwestern Chin State, destroying some 160 structures, including at least 2 churches. The UN rights recently warned the military junta, which overthrew the civilian government in February, is planning attacks in the region. Meanwhile, a new report from the Associated Press finds the Burmese military has been guilty of torturing prisoners since the February takeover. Over 1,200 have been killed and thousands arrested in the aftermath of the coup. In Afghanistan, at least 15 people were killed, dozens more injured after 2 explosions and gunfire hit a major military hospital in the capital, Kabul. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but witnesses describe fighters with the Islamic State clashing with Taliban forces. The latest violence comes after the United Nations warned that without urgent action, Afghanistan is poised to become the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Families displaced by fighting have been living in tents as the winter cold sets in, with food remaining scarce. This is Halima, a displaced woman in Kabul.
So far, around 4 to 5 babies were born here, and then they died due to the cold. Yesterday, an elder man and a child who went on the streets to earn money for buying food had a car accident and both died. We are in very tough situations.
Back in the United States, some 10,000 John Deere workers vote today on a tentative contract that could end the strike they began October 14th. If approved, the agreement would bring the unionized workers an immediate 10% raise plus 5% raises in the contract's 3rd and 5th years. The deal would also improve on employee pension plans and would pay workers an $8,500 signing bonus. It's a significant improvement from John Deere's final offer before workers went out on strike. In Wisconsin, opening arguments begin today in this trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, a white teenager who faces 7 charges, including homicide, for fatally shooting 2 men and wounding a 3rd amidst anti-police brutality protests in Kenosha last year. There's only 1 person of color on the jury. Rittenhouse was just 17 years old in August 2020 when he brought an illegally obtained AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifle across state lines from Illinois and joined other armed white vigilantes in the streets streets of Kenosha during protests over police shooting of Jacob Blake. The judge overseeing the trial has ruled the 3 protesters shot by Rittenhouse, 2 of them killed, cannot be labeled victims during the trial, but can be called rioters, looters, or arsonists if the defense can provide evidence to justify such terms. The U.S. Senate voted Monday to confirm Beth Robinson to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, representing Connecticut, New York, and Vermont. Robinson is a longtime LGBTQ leader who in 1999 argued a landmark case in Vermont that won broad legal protections for same-sex couples. She becomes the first out LGBTQ+ person ever to serve on a federal circuit court. Just 2 Republican senators voted to confirm Robinson, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine. And in Washington, D.C., civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson was hospitalized Monday after he fell and hit his head while visiting Howard University in support of student protesters. Jackson had been visiting with students at Howard, one of the nation's preeminent historically black universities, who began a sit-in last month to protest terrible housing conditions, including toxic mold, rodents, and roaches in campus dormitories. Students took over Howard's Blackburn University Center and have been camping out in tents since October 12th. Before his accident, Jesse Jackson reportedly secured a promise from Howard administrators that students would not be expelled or suspended over their nonviolent protests. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We are broadcasting from Glasgow and New York. I'm Amy Goodman, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez, who is in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.